Today, we continue on the 40 Crumbs mod. Now that we have access to the Crazy Dave shop after beating level 3-4, we'll now have 10 seed slots, as well as Gatling Pea and Twin Sunflower onwards from level 3-6. Though Twin Sunflowers cost 225 Sun, which is a steep price to pay, it's well worth it. Because, well, did you know Twin Sunflowers give damage amplification, produce more Rainbow Suns than Sunflowers, and also produce Purple Suns? 225 Sun for a free Call to Arms ability every 90 seconds, totally not overpowered. And Gatling Peas are even better than that if you can believe it. They fire 12 Peas that burst into free lanes, do spread shots, and they only cost 50% more than a free Peter. Most zombies stand virtually no chance of survival, getting quickly vaporized with how much damage this does. Now, why on earth would we get such overpowered plants in the hardest ever PvZ mod? Well, let me introduce you to the new Zombonis. We've previously seen that they explode and spawn screen door zombies after reaching the 5th column, but my god, no one told me they were the fastest zombie in the game. Only Gatling Pea is strong enough to kill that before it explodes, and you might as well give up defending Zombonis without it since there's no other plant that's gonna do 1200 damage in 5 seconds. We were getting absolutely battered across the entire defense, but with our few Gatling Peas that managed to hold up their own, I managed to survive by stalling with walnuts and redirecting my instant kills towards the more vulnerable lanes instead, just barely surviving, thanks to not too many Zombonis spawning. I was already struggling, and this was just the first level of Zombonis, so wait till you see what's up next. Yup, Zombonis again, and this time also with buckets and snorkels. More importantly, this is the first free flag level of the mod. Knowing I had to defend a whole extra flag, I played the long game here by placing my walnuts further forward since I was planning on getting more repeaters. Just one problem. With Zombonis, practically anything placed beyond the 3rd column gets instantly decimated, and no plant is defending a screen door zombie spawned right on top of it without walnut protection. And without a whole column of Gatling Peas, stopping Zombonis is basically impossible without spikeweeds or other instant kills. Even replanting walnuts is futile, since Zombonis spawn so frequently, doing that is basically wasting sun on something that lives for 5 seconds only. And before I could even deal with the screen doors, more Zombonis are already here, and I pretty much gave up extending our defense beyond the 3rd column here. When even spikeweed spam is too expensive to counter Zombonis, I'll have to somehow get through this free flag level using only 3 columns of space. And so, I came up with this new lineup that was more Zomboni proof. My idea was to use spikeweeds to counter the screen doors the Zombonis spawn, which now deal double the damage compared to vanilla and also slow zombies down, while walnuts block them off and Chomper's healing provides for even more stalling. And as you can see, this set of defense in the ground lanes against even multiple bucketheads with ease, primarily because of the change that a random buckethead takes damage whenever another zombie takes damage. Yes, I somehow did not notice that until now. But as good as Spikeweed is here, its glaring downside is that it can't be planted in the pool. So with this setup, I had to rely on instant kills as the primary source of damage in the water lanes. Now, surprisingly, this unorthodox Spikeweed strategy actually worked right up until the 2nd flag, since most of the codex just outright died to the passive damage provided by Twin Sunflower's Purple Suns, significantly helping in keeping our walnuts much healthier than I expected. But you see, the critical flaw here was with Snorkel zombies. Since they're completely immune to instant kills, we're forced to DPS them down with Chomper, which were simply not strong enough to stop the Snorkel zombies in place. But if our only way to defend Snorkels doesn't work, because it doesn't do enough damage, then plain old simple, we're cooked! Didn't take us much longer to straight up lose the game afterwards. And so, I made one final change, Fume Shroom instead of Spikeweed. It serves the same role as a splash damage attacker, but with the advantage of working in the water lanes against Snorkels. Now, even though Fume Shroom is worse against screen doors, it didn't matter too much before the 2nd flag since there were not too many zombies, so Chompers on their own managed to kill everything anyway. But after the 2nd flag, each wave started having multiple Zombonis, making screen door zombies pile on way too quickly for our Fume Shrooms to handle. I tried spending a cherry bomb to thin out this crowd, but guess what? There were already 4 more Zombonis on the way, and this relentless pressure immediately overwhelmed our walnuts healing in the water lanes. It almost seemed we were headed for the same fate as when we were using Spikeweed, but by using Fume Shroom to knock back the zombies here, that gave us just a few extra seconds of stalling to get to the penultimate wave before the lawnmowers get activated to clear out everything. And pretty insane, we actually survived to see the final wave despite having no defense at all, by spending our final lawnmower to clear out the remaining ground lane and instant kills to clear out the water lanes. That's how I beat the first free flag level in this mod, in a very scuffed manner at least. Just when you think we've escaped hell, I introduce to you the Dolphin Rider zombies. Oh, you know, what could be so hard about them? I mean, they're not instantly jumping into the house. What's different about Dolphin Riders, you ask? Dolphin Riders push every zombie forward whenever they jump forward. We finally reached the point where even placing down plants to block off zombies has become pointless, as Dolphin Riders make every zombie bypass their plants altogether. Without a doubt, Dolphin Riders are by far the worst zombie this mod has thus far, invalidating every stalling plant we've unlocked over the past 3 worlds, making any zombie literally impossible to block off. Extreme times call for extreme measures. I immediately reconfigured my entire strategy towards placing every possible extra damage source in the water lane. I'm not talking about just Gatling bees, I'm talking about preparing an all-out Torchwood defense before the first light even hits. And don't forget about Twin Sunflower for damage amplification as well. This absolutely ridiculous focused fire down the water lane is the only way to counter Dolphin Riders, killing them before they even have a chance to jump over anything. Now, this level wasn't particularly tough after I set up a defense to just hard counter one specific zombie, but keep in mind, I had to do this to beat just the introductory level to Dolphin Riders. So, when it's now time for the penultimate level of the world with both Zombonis and Dolphin Riders plus Pole Vaulters, yeah, this is about to go down for real. With 3 significant threats, I needed something robust and versatile, so my first idea was to use Tall Nuts as they block off both Pole Vaulters and Dolphin Riders, which, yes, also now damage zombies around them with rotating grass tufts, almost like a weaker Gloomshroom if you think about it. But even if Tall Nut can block off Pole Vaulters, its ludicrously slow cooldown actually makes it a really impractical answer to them early on. I had to spend a squash just to defend the first Pole Vaulter of the level, and that was only half my problem. Without any other instant kills, since all my other slots went towards attacking plants, I already had to start sacrificing lawnmowers just to survive this early on. Oh, and even if we stop a Pole Vaulter's initial jump with a Tall Nut, they just teleport right through them anyway. So yeah, Tall Nut has seemed pretty useless so far, but hey, at least we won't die to Dolphin Riders if we have Tall Nuts, right? Well, here's the twist. Tall Nuts actually stop Zombonis from moving forward now, which works in our favor, but in exchange, they can't stop Dolphin Riders' push at all, which actually made me instantly die to a Pole Vaulter being lunged all the way to the back. That's Footy Crumbs Edition for you, where Tall Nuts somehow counter Zombonis but not Dolphin Riders. Now, why not just kill the Pole Vaulters outright with, say, Hypno Shrooms so that won't happen? Well, this works if we can take out most of the HP of a Pole Vaulter before it jumps, as this allows Tall Nuts to block it and clean them up afterwards. But you fail to force just one of the Pole Vaulters to teleport early. It will teleport past our Tall Nut at half HP and jump straight into the house, which kills us instantly. So, we actually need both Walnut and Tall Nut. Tall Nut to block off Zombonis and proc Pole Vaulters jump, then Walnut to block them off to kill them with whatever attacking plans we're using. However, adding Walnut doesn't really reduce our exposure to Dolphin Riders in the pool. I mean, there's only that much sun for so many repeaters and Gatling Peas we can plant before the first flag. And guess what? They don't even do anything if the pool ambushes and Zombonis just clog up the front. And I'll just let you witness the beauty of what's about to happen. Well, 40 Crumbs Edition isn't the actual hardest mod ever without reason. And somehow, that's only the first of 2.5 flags this level. Like, is there something we're just completely missing that could actually beat this? I kid you not. I tried about a dozen different strategies over the course of an hour, and none of them even came close to working against this level. I even tried Fume Shroom, but they simply lose to any early Pole Vaulters that come into the pool since they survive a Fume Burst. Even Tangle Kelp can't save us, since the recharge speed is simply too slow to help us play reactively in the pool. But my dumbest idea of all was this strategy where I intentionally sacrificed lawnmowers early on to set up Tall Nuts in lanes 2 and 5. Yeah, it's as stupid as it sounds. I was trying to substitute Gloomshroom for Tall Nut, even though it only does like a fraction of the damage. However, as long as there's only one Pole Vaulter on the side lane and we have Scaredy Shroom, then we'll take it out just in time to not die early. Yeah, don't even ask me how I was gonna defend Zombonis. It was a miracle I even survived for more than 5 seconds here. But at least this counters Dolphin Riders thanks to Tall Nut helping out with damage, and in exchange, we instantly lose against Pole Vaulters. Great strategy that I came up with here. However, what that did show was that it's possible to get enough Tall Nuts and Gatling Peas, as long as I sacrifice some lawnmowers early. So that's what I tried next with the Walnut Tall Nut strategy I was using an hour earlier, with Squash for an even more efficient early game. Unfortunately though, I misplayed by letting this Conan zombie walk to the 4th column, which let it kill this Twin Sunflower in the back. This one mistake carried forward and made me unable to afford extra repeaters from the water, and it proved devastating as I couldn't kill off the Zambonis in the front to deal with the Dolphin Riders on the first flag. So I had to redo this all again just because I lost that one Toon Sunflower. But we're making progress here. So I might as well try to improve on the early game while I was at it again. I greeted even more by sacrificing an extra lawnmower, and on top of that, I intentionally didn't place tall nuts in the water to breed extra repeaters, and I'll just clear the Zambonis with a cherry bomb to kill the Dolphin Riders of Gatling Peas. But somehow, this still doesn't do enough damage. One of the Zambonis still survives, and yeah, I was still somehow not greedy enough to defend everything the game throws at us. Seriously, I was almost 2 hours in on this level already. But eventually, I found the final piece of the puzzle I was missing, Tangle Kelp. You may think it's only useful against lone bucketheads early on, but by pre-planting several of them in the water, they'll ensure that on the first flag, anything that may spawn in the front in the pool will die instantly and allow us to kill off Dolphin Riders with Gatling Peas. And there you have the strategy that beats this level, including Zambonis. Wait, no, oh for Okay, I swear, if I have to play this level one more time, no more messing around. No more misplays, I'm getting Gatling Pea plus Torchwood to kill any Zambonis on the ground lanes, and that's the way we can get past the first flag once and for all. And now, by simply getting more repeaters, more Gatling Peas, more Torchwoods, replanting our walnuts and tall nuts, and constantly spamming Tangle Kelp, we can blitz through the second flag as well and finally make it to the end of the level. We get to the penultimate wave, there's nothing else we have to do now, and we can just relax.
Hello there.
No! No! One Zamboni exploded. No! Sakes, man!
2,000 years later.
Alright, and at last, we finally beat the level after, I don't know, 30 attempts maybe? My god, that's not even the last level of this world. And if you thought the last level took me long enough to beat, I introduced to you level 310, which is probably the dumbest level in the entire game, somehow one-upping 210. First of all, it's a conveyor belt level, so it's time to pray to RNGs again. With only Freepeter as the main DPS, we need Torchwood to amplify our damage, but with only a few Torchwoods before the first flag, I couldn't even properly utilize its new stacking feature that lets us get higher tier Flaming Peas. Not having any splash damage in the pool lanes will pretty much guarantee a loss since we can't put Spikeweed there, and we especially need it because of the extra Snorkel zombies. And remember, Snorkel zombies are immune to Jalapeno like they are to any other instant kill, so they pile up really easily and can quickly demolish our tall nuts, leaving us exposed in the pool. This causes a domino chain effect. If our tall nuts in the pool are dead, Zambonis there will start destroying our other tall nuts, opening up even more lanes for other Zambonis to wreck everything else. And before we can even try to recover, Dolphin Riders just instantly kill us by pushing everything into the house. Yeah, it's about as fair as it gets. Not only do we not get many Torchwoods, but Freepeters are just too weak. Like here, it took us nearly 5 seconds to fully kill off just one Conehead zombie from a pole ambush, so I can't possibly imagine them being able to counter the Dolphin Riders at all here. Oh, and that was just the first of 3 flags, by the way. And with only Jalapeno or Squash, defending several Zambonis at once is just quite literally impossible. The conveyor belt simply does not provide enough plants to instant kill spam. And no, I'm not counting Tangle Kelp. It kills only one zombie at a time. To put it very simply, if we can't even defend just regular Conehead Browncoat spam, what chance do you think we're gonna have against Zambonis and Dolphin Riders? Well, I definitely tried, but I didn't even come close to reaching the second flag with just Freepeter and Torchwood. Our damage output is simply abysmal, and our instant kills are outright trash for this level. And actually, I can quite confidently tell you that this level is impossible to beat. Even with Dream Luck, and you get the complete optimal defense, this doesn't even defend against the first flag. It is only this level of bad and unfavorable for us that I say that my only choice was, unfortunately, to skip this level. The second half of the pool stage was certainly diabolical, and we're only halfway through this mod. But now, it's time for World 4. Welcome to the fog stage. We're still in our backyard, but it's now back to nighttime. Ironically, nighttime actually makes this world fairly easy, since Sunshroom allows us to afford Twin Sunflower much earlier. This is why most levels in this world were extended to 2 flags, like level 4-1 here. With levels being longer, Seashroom becomes even worse than before. Getting a whopping triple damage buff, it is useful if you want to use them as a feed for Conad zombies. Yeah, with a 30-second cooldown, Seashroom might as well be useless. As for Jack-in-the-Box zombies, prepare for lots of screen shaking. Each Jack-in-the-Box zombie now also explodes on death, not just randomly, and revives itself 3 times before fully dying, creating 4 explosions in total. The only way to prevent these explosions is to use an instant kill like Doomshroom. But we don't have infinite Doomshrooms, so we're forced to counter them by spamming chump blockers. I had to constantly shove all our cheap plants like Puffshrooms and Sun Producers in their face just to keep them at bay. For now, chump blocking will limit the amount of damage Jack-in-the-Box zombies do, but they'll become significantly more problematic in some of the future worlds, if you know what I mean. Now the next level is literally the same thing, but just with the addition of football zombies. But ironically again, I'd argue that this level is actually easier since we now have Planturn. It stuns all zombies for 3 seconds, removes more fog, and causes only 25 stun. Pretty balanced if you ask me. But hold on, don't we need to use Walnut against football zombies? Why would this level be easier if we have less chump blockers against Jack-in-the-Box zombies? Well, you see, only the flag waves really have a lot of both Jack-in-the-Box and football zombies because of the increased spawn rate, but obviously, we could just use a Doomshroom to clear the entire wave in one go, which solves that problem. The fact that there are football zombies inherently means fewer Jack-in-the-Box zombies can spawn, which inadvertently makes this level actually easier to beat. And with fewer Jack-in-the-Box zombies, Gatling Peas were easier to protect, and there was no chance for the zombies to ever break through. So that's how I beat level 4 too. Now that we have Cactus, you know what that means. It's time for Balloon Zombies. And I promise you that Cactus is worth 275 stun. It now fires spikes that split into 8 more piercing projectiles, making it an excellent crowd control option, and just dealing much more damage in general. They are also still the main counter to Balloon Zombies, which now have balloons that are much tankier and don't pop instantly, but it's still relatively weak once it's dropped to the ground, so it's pretty easy to counter when alone. But this level was only 1 flag long, so it was pretty much a free win from the get-go. And with the first 3 World 4 levels being a cakewalk, you might ask, how is this supposed to be difficult? The next level is certainly a curveball. First things first, Blover doesn't one-shot Balloon Zombies anymore, as you can see here. They're still alive, just pushed backwards. What Blover now does is simply pushing zombies back and doing some damage while slowing them down. Yeah, very creative, I know. However, what I didn't expect was that Balloon Zombies now speed up the zombies behind them, carrying them along. This made Dolphin Riders basically unanswerable, which is why I had to bring Tallnut to mitigate how much they push the other zombies. But going for Tallnut in this level would end up backfiring on us majorly, as I didn't anticipate Balloon Zombies could carry zombies to bypass plants altogether, rendering our Tallnuts mostly useless. Because of that interaction, not only did I lose half my sun production, but I was also forced to use a bunch of lawnmowers just to survive here. It was looking like I was cooked, but I managed to barely survive by just relying on stalling the zombies and getting off Doomshrooms. That allowed me to beat the level despite that relatively early hiccup against the Balloon Zombies, and now that we have the second best taco of all time, it means that we can unlock Gloomshroom and Catzel from Crazy Dave's shop. Now, I'm gonna skip over level 4-5 as Facebreaker was unchanged from vanilla, so time we face off Digger Zombies. But trust me when I tell you they won't be easy to beat even with the new 500 Sun Cattail, which is now an insane global range plant that shoots splitting spikes like the cactus, almost like an advanced Intel Airburst Starts Monkey sub, so it's definitely worth the price, I'd say. So how would these cattails somehow not counter Digger Zombies? Well, that's because Diggers now attack plants while underground, slowing down to do so, and its damage is nothing to scoff at, as it kills normal plants in half a second, ripping through our defense like butter right here. I was very lucky to have enough purple suns to kill it before I reached the Twin Sunflowers. And yes, it basically means that Split Pea is completely useless since it doesn't deal with the Digger Zombies while it's underground. So we're basically at the mercy of just praying for purple suns or having to spend instant kills, which has somehow worked out for us so far. But if it doesn't, we're just screwed because they're simply unkillable. With Diggers now spawning into water lanes, we're looking at a 500 stun difference between a Cattail surviving or not. Like, seriously, this is a zombie that's impossible to stop with any attacking plants. Had this level had something more threatening that Cattails did encounter, I probably would not have gotten away with covering half my lawn with just some producers and defending Diggers that way. But you'll see exactly how that scenario plays out in the next level. That's because level 4-7 will now put Diggers together with Jack-in-the-Box and Buckethead zombies. And, you know, Buckethead zombies are tanky, which is not only bad for cattails, but also starfruits. Instead of being a cost-efficient DPS plant, it's more of a dollar store glaive lord that does almost no damage. Just for reference, even Tona does like 3 times as much damage as starfruit in this mod. And well, you know a plant is trash when it can't even defend against just brown coat zombies. I lost nearly all my Centrums in the early game just because of having invested in this junk. Well, I didn't exactly lose on the first flag because I had Doomshroom to bail me out for just 1 wave, but yeah, very quickly, I ran into a dead end because just a few cattails aren't gonna beat the entire level. And so, I readjusted towards a Gatling Piece strategy, which is better suited to deal with Buckethead zombies. But still, that won't keep our Sunstream safe. There's no space to put them in the back if we're using Gatling Piece and repeaters, and anything we put in the front just gets blown up by Jack-in-the-Box zombies. With our front lines blown out wide open just like that, our defense quickly fell against the onslaught. And things were not getting better as I did not have a way to protect my DPS plants with Walnut on cooldown. I was only able to barely stay alive by getting back to Doomstream in time before I lost everything. And very luckily, there were only a few Jack-in-the-Box zombies in the last few waves, so I managed to stall for long enough with the little I had and cycle to another Doomstream to reach the final wave with all my lawnmowers intact and sack all of them to beat the level. It certainly wasn't pretty, but that's how I barely beat level 4-7. These new zombies are just getting crazier by the level. And up next is probably the worst combination yet. It's Poco zombies along with the return of newspaper zombies. But fortunately for us, we just unlocked Gloomshroom a few levels prior, and it now basically one-shots Conehead zombies. No kidding. This is because Gloomshroom received a straight up quadruple damage buff in this mod. So even against newspaper zombies, just a few bursts will kill them, and other zombies don't even stand a chance against this absolute beast of a plant. So even though Pogo zombies now move 10 times faster, it doesn't even matter since Gloomshrooms just killed him instantly. With such an overpowered attacking plant, all I had to do was just replant the walnuts when they died and simply sit back and watch as Gloomshrooms demolish wave after wave without me even having to lift a finger. This is a 300-sun plant, by the way, and 2 of them literally soloed the entire level. I mean, the difficulty in World 4 is quite all over the place. And now, time for the penultimate level of Fog, bringing back balloons, pogos, and even screen doors. With both Bucketheads and screen doors, this seems like a great opportunity to use Magnashroom, which now removes 6 metal objects at once and has infinite range. Sounds pretty good for only 150 stun, but the downside is that its downtime between pulls is now excruciatingly long, taking a whole 30 seconds. I actually had to get a pumpkin down against this Buckethead just to not die because Magnashroom was taking so long to reload. And yes, Pumpkin now costs us 175 stun, but now heals the plants in its tile, including itself, as you can see here with its HP bar. But honestly, considering that walnuts can protect 8 plants at once at a fraction of the cost, pumpkins are really not worth it, and there goes our plant turn because I didn't have walnut. Well, you'd think it'd at least protect our Gloomshrooms really well for the extra price we paid, but it's actually got less health than a walnut, so it dies before our Gloomshroom can even kill the flag zombie. And surprise surprise, if you lose half your main damage output, then there's basically no way to make a comeback, especially if there are also screen door zombies making every zombie twice as tanky. So I ditched Magnashroom and Pumpkin, going back to the old reliable Walnuts for protection and Doomshroom as our supporting instant kill plant. Walnuts allowed me to get much more defense by the first flag, and Doomshroom instead of Magnashroom allowed me to thin out the crowd that is the first flag to actually remove threats off the lawn. With this setup, the only time we even came close to losing was against a lone Pogo zombie that we couldn't take out because it was screen door protected, but there was pretty much no other way the zombies could have actually gotten past our Gloomshrooms, even less when we also have cattails dishing out insane board-wide DPS. And that's the penultimate level of World 4 done. Overall, much easier than the levels in World 3, simply thanks to Sunshroom. And now, the last level of World 4, which is also my least favorite level in the entire game because the screen flashes make it impossible for me to actually show you the gameplay. But the worst part of this level is that it's simply impossible to beat. There's literally no way to thin out the crowds of zombies because the conveyor belt of this level provides no instant kills, meaning we have to sacrifice our lawnmowers just to defend brown coat zombies, all the while being unable to see, and our best single target DPS plant being Sea Shroom since Starfruit and Cactus only do splash damage. Yeah, good luck if you want to attempt this. And very quickly, we find ourselves completely unable to defend, and we haven't even faced off any of the special zombies. I mean, if there's one level that you can call impossible, it's gonna be this one. Oh, and also, if you don't die to just sheer brown coat zombie spam, then you'll certainly die against Jack-in-the-Box zombies and Digger zombies, which just destroy our entire defense, if we even have any defense remaining. So yeah, let's just call a spade and skip this level, meaning we will now move on to World 5, which, if you can believe me, is somehow worse than whatever we just witnessed. Welcome to the roof stage. If you thought the mod so far has been atrocious, I promise you, Bungie zombies are the cherry on top. First things first, some changes about the roof slope. Scaredy Shroom can no longer shoot zombies from the 4th column as they did in the original game, making our early game significantly harder. But more importantly, we haven't unlocked flower pots yet, so if any of these die, we can't replace them. Which is even scarier considering Coconut zombies are already starting to damage them, forcing us to get a walnut super early just to keep them alive. And literally, on just the first wave, we've already overspent our set and don't have enough to get something like a cabbage pole to defend this basic zombie. Yeah, roof is where the difficulty truly kicks in, as all our previously cost-effective options are thrown out the window and we have to play much safer. So, without Scaredy Shroom and very little time to set up a defense to protect our flower pots, the only way to survive is to use a walnut to block off free lanes, then spend instant kills on the other lanes to kill anything we can't block off. This is the only way to reliably stop the zombies without slowing down our sun production, and it's necessary if we want to afford attacking plants like chompers to actually kill these zombies without just spamming potato mine and squash. But definitely do not get cabbage pole as your attacking plant for this level, because not only does it cost almost twice as much as before, but it also only attacks once every 6 seconds. And to compensate for getting doubly nerfed, most of its DPS is now in these cabbages that split off and fly to no man's land. Now, if you thought roof was already bad with cabbage pole being nearly useless now, Bungie zombies make it even worse as they now just instantly replace the tile they're targeting with a gravestone. Yeah, there's not even any counterplay to that. Already off to an absolutely horrific start to World 5, but thankfully this level is only 1 flag long and otherwise only has basics and coneheads, so nothing seems too difficult just yet. Is what I would have said had I not witnessed. What's different about the final wave, you ask? Okay, we got more damage amplification. Wait, what the heck? What the heck? Bro, what? What the heck? No, what? Bro, what? What the heck is this? Welcome to World 5 for real. Bungie ambushes have been insanely buffed, spawning an absurd amount of random zombies across the whole board and usually instantly killing you in only a few seconds. Just wow. I haven't even talked about the gravestones that Bungie zombies make before the final wave, which is, you know, completely RNG. Because guess what? It's not only Bungie ambushes, but they are also grave ambushes. Yeah, and they can spawn the first column if we were just unlucky with what the Bungie zombie targeted. Combined with the absurdity that is the Bungie ambush that can literally spawn any zombie in the game right on top of our defense, we've seriously gone past the point of unfair this time. This is straight up if I've seen any before. My goodness. So, what's my plan to deal with this? Well, first things first, I'm gonna use Gloomshroom as my attacking plant, as it no longer sleeps in the day, so that's an easy upgrade from Chomper. More importantly, I'm stocking up as many instant kills as possible. We can't buy roof cleaners from Crazy Dave until we beat this level, so just having a ton of squashes and potato mines in the back is the best alternative we realistically have. But with space for only about a dozen instant kills, this is nowhere even near enough to deal with the number of zombies that spawn. It's just too many zombies, and there's practically not even time to process what's going on before we just straight up lose the game again. And it's the fact that there are so many zombies that straight up instantly kill our plants that makes this insanely difficult. No matter how many walnuts and pumpkins you have, just one jalapeno zombie can instantly wipe out the whole lane and cause us to lose the game. How are you even supposed to counter that? The answer is, you can't. Planter only gives a 3-second stun, and you only have 1 cherry bomb and 1 jalapeno against 20 different threats. Yeah, you can stop 1 Zomboni, but what are you gonna do against everything else that's still alive? You don't even have Flower Pot to rebuild any defense that is lost, and there are no more instant use plants we can even bring. Is this level just straight up impossible, or are we just getting ridiculously unlucky? Well, desperate times call for desperate measures. The only way we can even stand a chance is to utilize pause buffering, as we need some time to pinpoint where any jalapeno zombies are before they incinerate, so that we can kill them using our own jalapeno and keep our flower pots alive so we can defend ourselves. But again, how do you deal with, say, this football zombie, plus these newspaper zombies, and this Gargantuar? There are just too many threats to handle at once, and pausing does help us, but it's not going to help us kill 20 extra zombies, and it only delays our inevitable death. I spent over 2 hours on this level trying all sorts of variations to test the effects of different placements, but every time, without fail, I did not even come close to beating the final wave. I even tried Hypnoshroom to spawn camp some of the ambush zombies, but literally nothing had a significant impact on changing our fate, and I was dead regardless of what I did. Hell, I haven't even talked about how often we have to actually defend a grave ambush on the first column, which is just a 20% chance we straight up lose. There's literally no way to defend a zombie that spawns in the first column. We have no flower pots to block them off, and also no time to do enough damage before we instantaneously lose. Even pausing won't save us here. Yup, literally 20% of all runs were just automatic losses, and all I could do was just press restart and try to roll the dice again. And on top of that, I had to deal with game crashes as well. A run can just go down the drain because of spaghetti code. All in all, I ultimately could not find any way to get as close to beating level 5-1, even after my hours of testing. This was just the first level of the world, and I was already brought down to my knees by just one Bungie ambush. Surely, I was missing something that could allow us to actually make it past this level. Well, I came back the next day after having done more research and testing off stream, and I figured out what I had been missing all along. That's right, Spikeweed is no longer grayed out for roof levels, as it can actually be planted on the roof, being the only way we can expand our defense without having unlocked flower pots yet. In light of that, I immediately switched to a tall nut strategy so that we can block off zombies, and hopefully that will give time for Spikeweeds to kill them. Not only that, but I also needed tall nuts to maximize stalling every wave and get as many Spikeweeds as I could to counter the Bungie ambush. And as you can see, having Spikeweed just gave us a little bit of extra leeway and allowed us to kill off a few Zombonis on the Bungie ambush. Still, if there were too many Jalapeno and Jack-in-the-Box zombies, it was still impossible for us to protect our flower pots from getting incinerated into fine dust. But now that we have a way to actually kill some zombies without flower pots, all we need is just some good RNG to simply survive the initial drop of zombies and beat the level with Spikeweed spam after. And persist I did. I fine-tuned the strategy and my micromanagement skills with pause buffering each time, always slightly improving so I could eventually push over the edge and beat the level when luck was on my side. And eventually, I got this extremely lucky Bungie zombie that ended up spawning on the 6th column thanks to us having Spikeweed. For once, I was able to fill up my flower pots with the plants I wanted because I did not have to worry about a grave ambush zombie spawning behind our wall plants. On the final wave, I was extremely patient, carefully pausing just to get into the mental space of preparing to defend the final wave, and I made absolutely sure we used our planter at the right time for maximum stun value against the first batch of ambush zombies, then carefully looking at where I needed to put down a new Spikeweed when the second ambush arrived. I took my sweet time analyzing what I had to do here, and after realizing there were no Jalapeno zombies but only one Jack-in-the-Box zombie, I made my easy decision to just use the Jalapeno in the middle lane. And after another long pause to think about where to use our Cherry Bomb, I settled on using it to kill this ladder zombie in lane 2, as I didn't want any funny business with the newspaper zombie behind it that could potentially break through and kill us. Having now neutralized the threats in lanes 1, 2, and 3, I turned my focus to lanes 4 and 5, where Gargantuars were present. And my goodness, if I didn't have Spikeweed to slow these zombies down, then I would have literally lost to this Gargantuar in the bottom lane. And Spikeweed single-handedly bought us just enough time to get us back to another Cherry Bomb to finish it off. But there you have it. I spent more time than I did on the entirety of World 4 on just this one flag level. And indeed, I've managed to beat level 5-1. That was just the first level of the world, with many more to come. But that's for next time, where we'll be taking on even more levels on the roof. I can promise you these don't get any easier, so subscribe to stay tuned and click on the video card below to continue watching the next part of our journey in the 40 Crumbs mod.